begin because Ronke is here and she's here with a fantastic talk on the effects of COVID-19 on girls' education in the developing world. My name is Angela. I'm presenting. I'm a volunteer for Asfar and the Resolve Network. I'm currently in Bosnia and Herzegovina. The digital talk will be with Ronke, who is an Msc International Development graduate from the University of Birmingham. She's the founder of Anchorise, a social enterprise centered around empowering young girls through education with the sale of sustainable backpacks and sidebags. She's passionate about young girls having access to education and justice in order to live out their full potential. So thank you so much, Ronke, for being here. Thank you for being this fantastic talk, and I'll leave it over to you.
Thank you. Hi, guys. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to speak. It's like my first speaking engagement, so it's exciting. So like Angela said, I am speaking about the effects of COVID-19 on girls' education in the developing world. I specifically focused on the developing world because that's usually where I work and where my projects and everything I do is kind of based around. But of course, there are effects all over the world on education. So the first thing I want to say, just talk a little bit about me. I'll just rush through this because it's kind of boring, but I did my master's in international development at the University of Birmingham. I graduated in November through COVID style on like Zoom, and I'm the founder of Anchorise CIC, which is essentially a social enterprise centered around empowering young girls through education in Africa. We're starting first with Nigeria, and we're doing this through, like Angela said again, sustainable backpacks and side bags, and we're looking to launch through crowdfunder in June. I'm also a trustee and partnership leader, Coalition Against Sexual Assault Africa, which is a group of young Africans who have come together to kind of to respond to the sexual assault epidemic in Africa. Again, we're starting in Nigeria because that was over the summer, over last year, a huge spike. There was a huge spike in sexual assault, and we just wanted to respond to that. I skipped one actually. I'm project lead at Black Inclusive Curriculum Ireland. So I am originally Nigerian, but I grew up in Ireland for most of my life. And as a result, a lot of Black professionals, going off the back of everything that happened last year with the Black Lives Matter movement and the different discriminations that come into light that Black people face around the world, we wanted to petition the government to create a more Black inclusive curriculum and provide anti-racist teacher training, which is crazy that there isn't anti-racist teacher training. But yeah, we wanted to petition the government to do that. And so we're coming together and we're working with practitioners, different study practitioners, academics, and even people who are in government to help that happen. And lastly, I'm a refugee and migrant practitioner. So I work with young refugees and migrants all across the West Midlands to help with advocacy and well-being and all that good stuff. So that's a little bit about me. So yeah, I'm gonna first start off by talking about the importance of girls' education. And I'm pretty sure you all know it or are familiar with it, but I'm going to run through it again. So of course, like we see, it reduces the prevalence of child marriage, it increases economic growth, there's lower maternal and child mortality through the increase of girls' education. There's an improvement in political engagement and leadership. That decreases the chances of participating in vulnerable employment, such as, being a housemaid or being a cook or even being a hawker in the streets. Which is really seen all over the developing world, from Lagos to places in India, like just seen all over. And one thing that I realized is that stood out to me when studying this, both in my master's years and in my year as a master's student, and also when I started Anchorise, is that actually educating girls contributes to so much of the SDGs. All around. I believe every single one of the SDGs can be linked to this one thing, which is girls' education, improving the quality and the amount of girls that are educated around the world. For instance, when it comes to the increase in economic growth, and 1% for every 1% of girls, I believe, a 1% increase in secondary education for girls would lead to 0.3% in the country's annual per capita income, which is wild and crazy. So it shows how important it is. Even like when it comes to the improvement of equality, when girls are reduced inequality, which is also an SDG, when girls are educated, it reduces it reduces inequalities because they're able to be politically engaged and obviously perform in different economic spheres and do different jobs that they want to, have more agency. So essentially, girls' education is important because it helps with the overall movement of the SDGs and helps the SDGs essentially move forward. So that is why girls' education is important. However, even though it is important and it's been seen as important, proven as important, there seems to not be a lot of focus on girls' education. And there was a crisis even before COVID. An estimated 50 million girls will never even go to school. Also, girls have less access to laptops and smartphones, according to the World Bank. And a lot of girls actually miss out on their education because of their menstrual cycles. And this was similar to like the last talk about period poverty. Because of that, a lot of girls actually would not go to school, do not even have safe environments to go to school. So a lot of the girls, I know you've heard of Boko Haram in Nigeria, and the girls being stolen there, the Chibok girls being stolen and well, kidnapped really. So there are a lot of places, a lot of educational environments that are not even safe for young girls. Girls miss out because of child marriage. According to Girls Not Brides, 12 million girls are married before the age of 18, which is horrible. And like lastly, what I found, even when I work at Anchorise, and it's actually why I started Anchorise, is that there isn't a lot of value placed on girls when it comes to education as there is on boys. So actually Anchorise started when I went to Lagos to kind of teach an empowerment and leadership workshop or talk for young girls. And what happened in that talk was as I was leaving, I was saying goodbye, I heard the teachers kind of like snickering in a very passive way. They just didn't, they seemed quite like content or seemed quite used to what they were about to tell me. And they turned around to me and they were like, oh, hopefully they retain all the knowledge you just shared with them because they're not coming back to school. And I was like, what do you mean? I was confused because obviously they seemed really eager and they were just absolutely bright. And when I asked them, they were like, a lot of parents would actually rather send their boys through education than send their girls. They see almost their boys as having more economic value, or education being more valuable for boys than it is for girls. And obviously that comes with mindset and about how girls are valued and seen in general in communities all over the world, not just in Nigeria. So because of that, it increased the crisis on education because girls were just not seen as valuable. And because of this, they didn't get access to education, or their parents would sacrifice certain things in order to get them through education. So yes. And this is similar to what we saw. So what's happening right now with COVID and the COVID crisis is similar to what we saw with Ebola. So obviously the crisis on education with COVID is much widespread than it was with the crisis on education with Ebola. But it's something that we can draw parallels to. We've seen these patterns being drawn after Ebola. And unfortunately, even though we've had learnings from Ebola, it wasn't applied or isn't being applied with COVID as well. So I'm just going to show you this video. It's from Sierra Leone, and it talks about the education crisis after Ebola. So let me know if you can hear it in the chat, if it's good.
When I was a child, life does not...
Can you guys hear it? Just want to confirm.
We can hear it, all good.
Good.
It's easy. They killed my father during the wartime. So I'm now staying to my grandmother. When Ebola came into our country, I was scared about that. I think about my own life. School B shut down. I got pregnant.
Things were very hard. Education sector was behind. And that leads to a higher rate of pregnancy from the children because of suffering.
I gave birth to October the 5th, 2015. When I had my son, I was very proud of that.
When the schooling come back to session, these pregnant girls, we were not allowed to come back to school.
I go to the stream one day, then I heard about pregnancy lesson.
Remedial school was organized for those children that were pregnated during Ebola and even before Ebola.
I decided to go to this class because it was free. I was very happy. I acquired the knowledge that I have lost.
There was not even a single day that Mariette did not come to school. So that even aspire me to help her greatly so that she can return back to her normal school because of the time she gives to herself.
I have interest for my school. That's why I will do all things as possible for me to go back to school. This class helped me to write my exam, so I passed it.
So yeah, that's pretty much what I was trying to show with that video, and what the video was kind of explaining and displaying was the fact that after Ebola or during Ebola, a lot of young girls were actually displaced from school and never returned to school because when they were at home, because schools were shut down around Liberia and Sierra Leone and other countries, a lot of girls were fell pregnant as a result of sexual violence, early child marriage, and when they're pregnant, there was policies that showed that they weren't allowed to go back to school if they were visibly showing. And obviously, as you know, like after a while, it's obvious when a person is pregnant. So that was a thing that happened. A lot of girls actually would fall behind compared to like their brothers or their male counterparts because they were so inundated with housework and chores, and they would usually be the ones to have to go to the markets to like sell food to help their parents survive and help their family survive. Essentially, they were like breadwinners. So this was something that was seen across Africa, or places in Africa that were plagued with Ebola, unfortunately. And this is actually something that is predicted or is being seen right now with the COVID. So what we saw with Ebola, was kind of explained earlier, is like more than 10,000 schools were closed across Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone. A lot of girls became pregnant. They were exposed to increased sexual violence, exploitation, and trafficking. There was an increased mental health issues that were found in young children. And during the crisis, the girls became main breadwinners for the family. And like I said earlier, with the policies concerning young girls not, if they're pregnant or physically pregnant, not being allowed to go back in school, those kind of policies, which were like an educational board policy, wasn't even individual to schools, would stop girls from returning back to school. So as we see, this is huge, and is an issue, or was an issue with Ebola, and is going to be an issue with coronavirus, like I said before. And therefore, young girls going back into school, they might face these problems, they might face these obstacles, and we might see a further decrease in girls attending school and increase in the crisis all around the world, educational crisis pertaining to girls, particularly all around the world. So yeah, I'm just going to summarize the focus of the effect of COVID-19 on girls' education, which is, I guess, the main point of this talk. So the Malala Foundation estimates that after the pandemic, 20 million girls in developing countries may never return to classrooms. This is due to a variety of reasons. As seen before, like very similar to the Ebola case, is because a lot of young girls have fallen back and fallen behind because of the closures and household chores, lack of resources. For instance, a lot of girls would not have been able to even access, not have been able to access laptops or even radio classes online or any type of tech that would have been able to help them catch up or be in line with education or whatever they were doing in class. But more guys, it was boys were actually had access to those resources, and that was actually proven by the World Bank. So all these factors of them not being able to catch up during during COVID, and being at home is an aspect of them not ever being able to return back to school. The more they're behind, the less likely they're going to be able to return back to school or even want to return back to school. There's an increase in child marriage and sexual assault, and because of this increase in child marriage and sexual assault, it means that a lot of young girls will not return back to school, and even the mental drain on because of sexual assault will be quite intense, that they won't even probably have confidence to walk into a school again. In addition to this, they have different factors such as schools increasingly not being safe, increasingly not being girl friendly, essentially. So a lot of young girls will not feel comfortable going back into school, especially if, for instance, they face sexual assault in school, or they don't have, again, like when it comes to period poverty, resources or places or facilities, a healthy, clean toilets where they can change safely and be hygienic when it comes to their cycle. So it seems like the mistakes that were being made with Ebola are kind of repeating itself. According to the Lumino Foundation, which is an educational foundation, a charity in America, they recorded that this has probably set educational movements back 100 years in this pandemic, and it's been just a year. So this year long of being out of education for a lot of girls and even a lot of young boys have literally set the educational movement and all the programs and all the projects that were being put through by multiple NGOs and government 100 years, because a lot of girls that are vulnerable will essentially slip through the cracks and never be able to return to class. So there needs to be a way in which governments can really target these vulnerable girls, the most vulnerable girls in the communities, and reach out to them in order to bring them back into education. So yeah, these are the effects, like summarize, of COVID-19 on girls' education. It just means that the complete educational movement will be set back almost 100 years, according to the Lumino Foundation. This is confirmed by several other foundations around the world. It's had a real devastating effect on girls' education, as you can imagine. So, and despite of the setback, there have been some innovations during COVID-19 to help young children get back into education or keep up with education. The radio and TV programs in Cambodia and Nigeria, in Kenya, they use local media and to provide resources and provided resources. And according to the Global Partnership for Education, along with additional funding, there's a global educational monitoring body that has been set up to hold government accountable concerning education for all, so concerning educational policy. And these innovations are great, but once again, young girls slip through these innovations. So even though we heard about these different projects and these different NGOs reaching vulnerable children through this, they mostly reached young boys, and they actually, according to the World Bank, and they couldn't still reach the young girls because of what are the plethora of reasons that I explained before, them being inundated with household chores, becoming the main breadwinners, falling pregnant, falling victim of child marriage and sex trafficking, especially because families are extremely vulnerable during COVID-19, and we're quite literally looking for a way to survive. And unfortunately, and it's honestly grotesque and horrible, a way in which a lot of families have been seen to survive is literally selling their young girls to modern day slavery, whether it's through the vulnerable employment, such as like being a maid, or like having or taking some of the bride price, if you will, or the dowry from older men, and giving their kids off to child marriage. So this has been seen throughout COVID. So even though these innovations and many others, I haven't put them all on this slide, but others have tried to use media sources, radios, TV programs, a lot of girls have fallen through the cracks. And even putting it more in context, a lot of young people, especially people in young girls in rural areas, would not have been able to even have access to this, to these resources. So even though they were great, a lot of people still didn't have access. So the main issue was access. And I'm gonna play, so we're going on to the section about talking about how we can build better. So we know the problem, we know that it's a dire issue right now, and it's gonna continue being a dire issue for many years to come unless we change and see what we can do to essentially, I know we've heard this and it sounds really corny, or some people don't like it, some people don't mind, everyone's in the middle, I don't know, but loads of people have different things to say about the phrase build back better. But I think it's an important thing to explore, because although we know that there's so many issues that have come outside of COVID-19, or rather it's kind of expose the inequalities, we now need to think about how to build back better. And this is a talk by Michelle Obama for the WISE Summit, which was in Doha. And she spoke a little bit about girls' education as a whole and kind of solutions about it. And one thing I want to note from this video, I'm not gonna show everything, but one thing I want to note from this is that she talks about a very wide range of solutions, and not just being, like, let's build schools and let's build this, but she talks about a wide range of solutions. And I just wanted to point out, because I thought it was quite good. So I'm going to play the video.
Yes, solving our girls' education crisis is definitely about resources, but it is also about attitudes and beliefs. It's about whether parents think their daughters are as worthy of an education as their sons. It's about whether our societies cling to outdated laws and traditions that oppress and exclude women, or whether their view of women are as full citizens entitled to equal rights. So today I want to talk with you not just as experts in your governments and organizations, but as thought leaders and opinion shapers in your countries. Because if we truly want to get girls into our classrooms, then we need to have an honest conversation about how we view and treat women in our societies. And this conversation needs to happen in every country on this planet, including my own. You see, I say this as someone whose country has undergone a long and difficult struggle for women's equality, a struggle that is still going on today. When my grandmother was born, women couldn't vote. When my mother was a young wife, women couldn't open credit cards in their own name. They needed their husband's permission. And when it came to education, their options were very limited. Back then, girls were discouraged from studying subjects like math and science, and from pursuing professions like law and business and medicine. In fact, just 50 years ago, there were so few women at Harvard University's law school that some professors used to have what they called Ladies' Day. That was the one day a year when they would actually call on the women in their classes. So back when I was a girl, even though I was bright and curious and I had plenty of opinions of my own, people were often more interested in hearing what my brother had to say. And my parents didn't have much money. Neither of them had a university degree, so when I got to school, I sometimes encountered teachers who assumed that a girl like me wouldn't be a good student. I was even told that I would never be admitted to a prestigious university, so I shouldn't even bother to apply. Like so many girls across the globe, I got the message that I shouldn't take up too much space in this world, that I should speak softly and rarely, that I should have modest ambitions for my future, that I should do what I was told and not ask too many questions. But I was lucky because I had parents who believed in me, who had big dreams for me. They told me, don't ever listen to those who doubt you. They said, just work harder to prove them wrong. And that's what I did. I went to school, I worked hard, I got good grades. I got accepted to top universities. I went on to become a lawyer, a city government employee, a hospital executive, and the most important job I've ever had, a mother to 2 beautiful girls. And as I moved forward, so did my country. In each generation, brave women and men fought to end gender discrimination in the workplace, to pass tougher laws against rape and domestic abuse, to ensure equal access to education for women. And while we still have work to do to achieve full economic political equality for women in the US, today, nearly 60% of American university students are women. And as for the law school at Harvard University, which I actually got my law degree, the dean of this school is now a woman, as are half the students. So I know from my own experience and that of my country that we cannot separate the issue of how we educate girls from the issue of how we treat women more broadly in our societies. So I would argue that the UN Sustainable Development Goals that you all will be discussing, goals like ensuring inclusive and equitable quality education and achieving gender equality and empowering all women and girls, those goals cannot be achieved separately. I would argue that we cannot address our girls' education crisis until we address the cultural norms and practices that devalue women's intelligence, that silence their voices, that limit their ambitions. So yes, we need to provide girls with safe transportation to school, but we also need to confront the cultural norms that make girls unsafe in the first place. The belief that survivors of rape were somehow asking for it, or that it's perfectly acceptable for a man to rape his wife, or that young girls who have survived sexual assault are somehow damaged goods, unfit for marriage, with few prospects for their futures. Because if we truly want to keep girls safe, we need to transform this culture of impunity into a culture of consent. And we need to condemn sexual assault for what it is, a violent crime that has no place in this world. And yes, we need to provide school bathrooms and feminine hygiene products for our girls, but we also need to confront the taboos that say menstruation is harmful or shameful. We need to confront the myths about women's sexuality that are used to justify horrific practices like genital mutilation and cutting, because if we truly want to empower girls to learn, then we need to ensure that their bodies are a source of pride, not pain or shame.
I'm gonna end it there because of time, but like I love that speech because it's encompassing of how wide the issue is when it comes to girls' education. It's not just about, for instance, building schools, like she said, and getting books and getting people through school. It's much more wider than that. It's holistic. It's about thinking about how girls are viewed in society, and how, because of the way the girls are viewed, or because of how people value girls, is put when it comes to girls' education, because girls are usually seen almost as perpetrators, sometimes when, or as the fault, like people who are at fault when they're raped or they're sexually assaulted. That's why, for instance, they're not allowed to go back into school when they fall pregnant in a lot of cases all around the world and in the developing world as well. So I think why I played that is just to show you that there are wider things and wider discussions that we need to have when it comes to making sure that after the effects of COVID-19, after COVID-19 is over, when it is over or whatever, or when everyone's vaccinated, how we can ensure these girls who are the most vulnerable will be able to get back into education, and not just get back into education, go through school, but get back into education, quality education, education that in buildings that are safe, with teachers that with teachers who will value them as people and value their voices as well. So to talk about education and getting girls back into education is so much broader, like I said earlier, than just building schools and just being okay with new shiny buildings. And I wanted to kind of just talk a little bit about building back better, like I just said earlier. And this is done from a lot of research to see after COVID and after Ebola, sorry, and even with talking about COVID and everything, is in order to build back better, we have to push governments for specific gender-focused COVID-19 responses, and that's go through from medical responses to economic responses. It needs to be general. It needs to be gender-specific when it comes to certain responses, because if it isn't, it's going to leave women out and the most vulnerable girls out as well. Also, they need to tailor their responses to address different vulnerabilities, and we need to engage women in different communities. I was in a talk by Karen Brown, which is the Global Director for Gender at the World Bank Group, and essentially what she was saying was that a lot of times, a lot of NGO projects or movement kind of missed the way because they don't really involve a lot of women or the local women in their projects or their responses. So in order to make a difference, and especially after COVID-19, we need to bring women's voices into new movements or into new projects, because they are the ones who, in a sense, understand their community best, understand what is needed within their communities. And in order to make change, then we need to bring them and involve them into the change. We can't just separate them, and we can't just have this idea, kind of like a colonized version of programs and projects, and kind of separate the people who actually need it away from the development of these projects. Also, there needs to be, a rise of low-cost technology. I think this shows us how much the world relies on technology and how important technology is. And there needs to be provision of low-cost technology, and not just provision of low-cost technology, but making sure and ensuring that young girls in families are able to get that technology. Because in some places in the developing world where young boys had access to technology, in a sense, they still weren't, poor families would have access to technology. Young girls within that family wouldn't even be able to use it. So let's say a family was given 2 computers and they had 5 children, it would be the boys, even though the boys were younger than the girls, who were allowed to use it or who had access to use it. So it's ensuring that, again, low-cost technology is available, but not just available, but being able to be used and accessed by young girls around the world. Also support innovative educational programs and community-led educational programs, which are kind of similar to what I stated in the second point. I know one thing that we are trying to do with Anchorise is make sure that we're not just giving scholarships and saying goodbye and not really looking at, for instance, the schools that we're giving scholarships to, what kind of programs they run, what kind of maybe after book clubs do they run, what kind of safety programs do they run, a holistic approach to development, not just putting young girls through school, not just giving scholarships, but really looking at how we teach them about their bodies, how we teach them about their worth, and how we can try and drive to end, for instance, period poverty, and create and lobby a lot of schools or a lot of local governments to create schools that are girl-friendly and are safe for young girls to be comfortable there. In addition to this, of how we can build back better, I just have loads on here when it comes to the COVID-19 response, but women-led self-advocacy, which is similar to the second point again, where we let women within communities lead on what they see as best. And caregiver groups. Caregiver groups was an idea, I think, that was pioneered by UN Women, and essentially it was just essentially a place where women can come in and maybe a daycare, take care of the kids, understand what their kids need, and give space for other women to teach their kids and for them to go trade and learn different things and learn different trades and learn different like different skills that would help them improve in the local economy and around their community as well. Also talking about sexual and reproductive health, a bigger push against child marriage and domestic violence, which we have seen soar throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. Lastly, safety nets for people who are in insecure sectors. So like I said before, a lot of young girls or a lot of families would, their parents would have to work in insecure sectors, such as like maybe hawking or maybe being like a maid at a house, or so like vulnerable on employment. And because of after the COVID, obviously with the COVID pandemic, that all would have stopped. And as a result of it stopping and there being a source of financial income coming into the family, when that stops, a lot of the time the girls will then have to take, the younger girls will then have to take much more responsibility. And like I said earlier, maybe find a job and be very, very, very vulnerable to susceptible to trafficking and child marriage. And I said this again earlier with holistic programs, but not just looking at building schools and getting girls through schools, getting them books, getting them uniforms, but looking at how we can create a safe environment that would truly empower them, not just because of what they're going to be fed in terms of education, but from their inner selves as well, and how they view themselves and how they view themselves in comparison to, you know, the way they view men in their society, and how they can see themselves in a bigger, brighter future. So I'm just going to stop talking for a little bit. I have discussions, discussion points, and it would be lovely to hear from you guys. I know just some of us here, but it would be lovely to hear from you guys. So the first question is, we can also talk about building back better, but it's centered around obviously the response after COVID-19 to education. The first question is, what do you feel should be the primary focus for ensuring that girls get integrated back into education, I should say? So you guys can answer it, you guys can type it.
Fantastic, Ronke, thank you. And everyone feel free to unmute yourself as well. We can all have a good discussion on this as well. And thank you so much, Ronke, for your really fantastic information and really interesting speakers as well we've had.
Thank you.
In your... Yeah. Christina?
Hi. So I think it's such a beautiful discussion. And also, I think one of the primary focuses that we should focus on will be safetiness, and girls who feel also protecting their environment mentally, physically, and also, as it was mentioned, with the resources they need, and not feel like they're excluded from the society or their circle, or that they are not important, and know that they're to make them feel that they're worth it, and no matter what, and that they can do everything. And I think the moral support and mental health support would be a good start as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. Having maybe ensuring mentors as well to help maybe help the young girls when they get back in school, to support them through that. And also, like you said, creating safe environments and seeing how schools can be better built to facilitate young girls when it comes to their personal hygiene and stuff like that. So yeah, I think, Christina, you're going along the holistic empowerment view, which I completely agree with them for. Does anyone have any points before we move to the next one?
I put something in the chat, but I think it's too loud for me to talk, so that's my contribution.
Thank you. I'm gonna see if I can read it. Sorry.
Oh, I can read it out. I said that I think that gender roles need to be addressed because even when girls do go to school, they can limit themselves to what they assume that they should be doing based on their gender and their position in society. I think when I was at school, women were especially told to go, do writing skills, English, that kind of thing, and not focus on maths and sciences. Yeah.
I completely agree. I went to all-girls school for secondary school, and there was an all-boys school right next to it as usual. And in the all-boys school, there was no home ec, but we were all kind of encouraged to do home ec and do like cooking, and like we had a class on how to clean, which is absolutely wild to me looking back. Genuinely, and that was in the textbook. That wasn't even just what a teacher said. So that so we need to just know like a main focus. I liked science, but I don't remember being encouraged as I was with home ec. And I would have loved woodwork as well, but I wasn't given a chance. Felt like I would have been able to build really good like chairs and stuff, but I'm a girl, so we should do home ec instead. So yeah, I completely agree. Like focusing on like changing gender stereotypes and stuff like that is important.
That's crazy that it was so blatant. It was so like obvious. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's really crazy. If I had the book, I would have shown you guys, but it was in the textbook. Yeah. So going on, thank you so much guys for sharing. Going on to the second discussion question, what do you anticipate would be the biggest challenge post COVID-19 when it comes to girls' education, obviously?
I have a thought. Could it be possibly that because obviously there's been like COVID has literally had it's been around for such a long period of time. Would it be that maybe like you showed in the video earlier, the first video where the girls were like kind of sexually abused, and there was a lot of sexual violence against women? Could it be that could have continued in certain countries in the world, and then that kind of delaying it further, having girls going back to school and education?
Yeah, I completely agree, because obviously even we see in the UK the increase in domestic violence is like skyrocketed. I can only imagine obviously in like for young girls who don't feel like they have a voice and who are incredibly vulnerable if they're stuck at home for this year. I can't believe we celebrated the year anniversary, like I said, which is crazy. Anyways, this year, I don't know why it's not necessarily a celebration, but anyways, anniversary is a weird word to use for it. But anyways, it's been a year, so I can imagine them being at home and being, being made privy to all that, and then trying to even get them out again would be so hard, because they might be mentally, like they might have a lot of mental health issues because of what they would face, and then their confidence will take a big knock-in. And imagine how they would then be viewed by society, especially if girls are pregnant or something. They could be viewed as people who they could be viewed basically not as the victim, which is horrible. So yeah, that's a good point. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else would like to share one more point before I move to the last question? No? Okay, the last question or discussion point, and we can all feel free, we can all just butt in or whatever. What can educational programs do to be innovative and ensure long-lasting engagement from girls? What do you guys think?
I actually want to say something about the previous one as well, and then for the last one.
Yeah.
I think that is gonna be even a huge problem with the distribution of vaccination, because the developing countries don't get as much help, and then they're like medical fields, and doctors are actually it's very hard for them, and they don't have the resources, and nobody actually helps them. And I think that's gonna be also a big challenge for them. And for the last question, I think will be not putting limits on what girls can learn and what cannot, and also I think question what they want to learn, what they want to do, and schools maybe provide them with that, as well as what they can do in the world, who they are as people, and not as just females as gender, but what they can do as human beings, because at the end of the day, the only thing that differentiates us is just our sex and not our mentality or what we can do. So I think will be the question, like what they need, what they want to learn, what they want to do, like to get to know themselves and not to limit on their own capabilities.
Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, I agree. Especially the biggest challenge post-COVID would definitely be the vaccinations and how safe people feel, or if like maybe like infections could increase because they're not able to, a lot of countries not able to have access to the vaccinations. And yeah, I agree with you. And like discussed earlier, it shouldn't be limited. Girls shouldn't be limited to like studying, things that are typically more feminine, such as home ec or whatever. They should be encouraged to study STEM subjects, and that actually goes towards the SDG goals of being innovative. And yeah, so I think I agree with you. Giving girls access to everything that they would like to do. Does anyone else have any points? It could be a discussion from these questions, or it could just be in general. Yeah. No?
I can give everyone a moment to think a bit more.
Yeah.
There's a fantastic I loved with Michelle Obama and her idea of, yes, you can do programs, but it's creating values in girls as well. There was a village in India where the leader lost his daughter and he decided to create value for girls, and the village plants 111 trees for every single girl. And so girls suddenly, when they are born, have this value that the village is going to get trees. And it's a very simple idea, but it's creating that value for girls as well. Because I think as much as there is programs and things out there, if girls are not valued, if they're excluded, for being pregnant, like in Sierra Leone, they're not going to get that focus on them as well.
Yeah, I love that idea. That's such a simple but like effective idea, to see that like when somebody, like a child is born, there's a value immediately placed. And it's sad that we had to go to like outside kind of components to do that, but that's still quite innovative. And yeah, I agree completely. It's about creating the value and seeing that, realizing that young girls have value inherently. Anyone else have any?
I have another idea too.
Yes.
Possibly have like sort of not like formal groups, but like kind of like focus groups type, like groups in like whatever village or anywhere where there's like a high population of girls that aren't in education, to just have like a kind of focus group around sanitization and stuff, and like healthcare and stuff like that, that kind of gives that, that the girls in the area know that there's this place where you can go for like information or like advice and stuff like that, where they can kind of kind of feel that we do have this available for us, and that we are valued enough to have a spot for to learn about things that we personal things that we might need and stuff.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, involve them like in everything, because it's about them at the end of the day. Yeah, and I think a lot of international development programs often miss out on that. So that's a really good idea. I agree. Anyone else?
I think another point that you actually talked about, it was about like families valuing their male kids more than like female. And I think it will be like also important to challenge, I think, the cultural norms, so things can actually change. So maybe like teaching, like learning again, like mothers the value of their daughters as well. So I think, because if we think about it, like our first home was a womb, a mother. So I think the mother is a very important role of the womb. A woman actually is a very important thing in the world, and I think we should be like it should be like reminded again the value of them, and be encouraged to be who they are and do what they want to do. And also, as it was made, like doing more activities where girls are involved and not seen as something just for reproduction, or like cooking or cleaning or anything like that.
Exactly.
But yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing. I completely agree. I know we have a few minutes left, so it was gonna be a question response. We don't have that much time for that, which is gonna be, I was gonna be question and answers, but I don't have all the answers. We're all still figuring it out. But does anyone have any questions for me just in general? Maybe I'll take like one if there are any. Yeah.
I have a question, like how I, as a person, I could help in this like matter, and what I can do from where I'm from, like maybe my house at the moment, because I may not be able to go out and volunteer as I would like to, but what I can do right now.
Yeah, there a lot, and I probably should have done a side on like educational charities just around the world that help contribute to girls' education. I know, like for us with Anchorise, we're a social enterprise. I'm about to start up where we're selling a bag, and then for each bag there'll be a percentage donated to supporting innovations in girls' education in Nigeria, and then eventually we're going to go to Africa. But I know the plan have a good program which like helps with girls' education as well. World Vision as well is quite big on that. So apart from donating, like that's one thing you can donate, and there are loads of different programs. I don't know if you're in the UK, I don't know if I heard right, but in the UK, working as a refugee and migrant practitioner, there are loads of different programs for refugee women and young girls that you can also Google, and they can help you, which helps reintegrate which helps with educating refugee women, and you can volunteer to be part of that as well. So those are just like some ways I can think of right now to help in the future. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's a good question. And yeah, that is it for me. Thank you so much for listening. I enjoyed this talk. It was like kind of good to talk about. And if you want to keep in touch with Anchorise, what we do, please keep in touch on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. We have a blog we have a blog about every month. We release a blog from like writers all over the world. So if you would like to take part in that, let me know. If you'd like to take part in anything, volunteer in anything, just reach out to us on our social media platforms. But yeah, thank you so much again for having me. And it was great to talk with you guys this afternoon. Thank you for spending a little time.
Thank you so much, Ronke. Yes, thank you. You've been absolutely fantastic. We've learned so much from you. I could listen to you for so much longer, as well as Michelle Obama and those amazing girls in Sierra Leone. Thank you everyone for participating and bearing with a few glitches. It's been really interesting to get everyone's ideas, and I'm sure we could just keep going, but we do have ways to communicate with Anchorise. Thank you, Ronke. And for Asfar, we have digital talks coming up as well, so please check our social media. And thank you for participating in this talk. And at least we've had a really educational, really interesting hour, and really impactful to learn lots more about girls, because we do need that focus on girls. So thank you, and have a lovely afternoon, everyone, and a good rest. Ronke, you've done great.